Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today on our webinar about using Microsoft 365 as a knowledge platform. We may have a few more people show up as we go, but we have quite a few topics that we want to cover today, Dale and I, so we will get going. Just a couple notes before we dive in. I do get the question, are we recording? Yes, we are, and we will be sharing that recording and the slides in a couple of days, so watch your email for that. We do have a chat function in this webinar, so you can use that to ask any questions or leave comments. We like those as well. And if you do want to speak, there is the ability to take you off mute. So just raise your hand and we can have a conversation as well. We should have time at the end for questions and discussion. You may see some arrows underneath the slides on your screen that let you advance. If you do this, that's totally fine, but you also may get out of sync with what we're presenting. So if that happens, there should be a sync button that lets you get back. And finally, there are captions. If you go to the More menu, you will be able to find that there. So what we're covering today, so let's get into our topic. We are talking about strategies for designing an effective knowledge platform with a focus on Microsoft 365 as well. So we want to talk about the benefits, why better knowledge sharing can help your organization, give you tips for adopting those tools, and give you an understanding with some demos in Microsoft 365 about the knowledge options. We are focusing on strategic advice here in this webinar, and there's a technology as well spread throughout. However, we could probably do webinars on various parts of the technology. So if there is something that is of interest, let us know. We may do a future deep dive into that particular component. Just in case you don't know me, my name is Jazz. I'm a consultant at Gravity Union. I've been working in this space in the SharePoint, intranets, and user experience design space for a number of years. I love helping organizations and people build better collaboration systems that help them get their work done more effectively. And with me, I have Dale, and I'll hand it over so he can introduce himself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dale Arsenault, and I've actually just recently joined Gravity Union. Very excited about that. And as you can tell, I'm not going to read what's on the screen, but I've got about 20 years experience in knowledge and information management, another 20 years in related areas, management consulting, technical, learning and development, etc. And I've had the absolute pleasure of working with some amazing people and being part of a number of different knowledge management oriented communities, and been able to learn an awful lot from a lot of these people. So this is an opportunity for me to actually share some of my experiences and what I've learned.
And just really quickly about us, you're not here to learn about Gravity Union, but if you haven't heard about us, we are based in Canada. We work with clients across North America. We are a Microsoft partner and as well Collabora partner. We focus on compliance systems for our clients as well. We are, if you're looking for a job, we are certified as a great place to work and recognized for our culture. And we provide services, like I said, on Microsoft and collab-based platforms. And we do it from the vision all the way into build and implementation as well. So let's get into our topic today, using Microsoft 365 as a knowledge platform. I'll hand
Excellent.
it back to Dave, or Dale, sorry.
Dave's the other guy. So
Dave's the other guy, yes.
Dave's the other guy. So just a quick touch on some of the modern origins of KM. So obviously, as many of you are probably aware, it's not a new topic or not a new subject area, but it's still a valuable lens of focus, given that we're trying to move into innovation and data, big data, artificial intelligence, decision intelligence. Everybody's been challenged with working in a hybrid workforce or a hybrid work environment over the last 2-3 years. But of course, this is rooted in an awful lot of really good thinking that happened in the 1990s and 2000s. Some amazing benchmarking organization, communities, consulting services, and of course that even is predated by some really interesting business thinkers back in the 70s that were looking to leverage knowledge and information for competitive advantage, right? So there's a really interesting modern lineage for the knowledge management lens that we're going to be talking about today. So, and this always gets challenging. What we're trying to do here is not to be overly definitional, because that can get into some rather interesting conversations, perhaps some of you have been part of. But let us say that in a very simplistic form, with knowledge management, what we're trying to do is to remove barriers for people to learn from data, information, and each other. And of course, the real reason for doing that is to help people get on with their day, help people do work. So if you look at the little diagram on the screen, ultimately so much of how we work these days is we learn before we do something. Right. So we go out and we'll talk a little bit about what that actually means. And then if we're super clever, we'll do something, we'll reflect on it, and we'll learn from that experience. Now, if we expand on that just a little bit, so we learn from data and information. We also learn from people. And thinking about reciprocity a little bit, we create and update information and the data from what we've learned, keep that nice and fresh. And of course, we learn something and we share it with people that we work with so they in turn can benefit from that. So there's kind of a learning cycle that takes place here that allows everybody to be effective in terms of the work that they do in the job environment. So we have a little bit of a poll for you because really curious to find out just some examples of how you articulate where some of the knowledge challenges that you actually face.
Feel free to type in one or two or multiple words.
Convention. Ooh, there's a good one. Implicit knowledge, resources, managing files. Mm, most definitely.
Working with people across time
Convention.
zones or different
Yeah.
regions.
And convention, right, there's a link there to culture as well, right? Status quo. Surfacing fear of
Right.
technology. Yeah, implicit knowledge, different time, metadata. Ooh, there's one of my favorite words. I love librarians. Um, what else was I seeing? Documentation is boring. Get that for sure. Repository surfacing, accessibility, searchability, building learning, implicit knowledge,
Documentation
time
is
zones.
boring.
Yeah, absolutely necessary evil in some cases. Fear of technology. We always, building learning convention. Interesting. I love this tag cloud or this word cloud because there's an interesting word that's right in the center, which is pretty relevant to this conversation. This is cool. Okay. Maintenance cost, yeah, business focus for sure. Different time.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
your
No, this is really
submissions.
so. This is interesting. So going back to this document, not this document, sorry, this visual for a moment. When I think about the words that everybody's been typing in, they all seem to align with where we've got those little red dots on the actual line. So those are, if you will, the different areas where pain points can actually arise in an organization. And I'm, thinking back on what everybody was typing in for that word cloud, everything that I saw there will fit in here some way or other. So let's break down each one of these successively and talk about what some of those challenges are. So first one is people can't learn from information and data. Well, what does that really mean? So sometimes people are faced with, well, okay, they don't know where to look. There's too many places. One of our clients we've been working with recently, they individuals have to search across 5 or 6 different repositories to look for something to get on with their day or to respond to a question or even a access information request. It's hard for some people to determine what's the most recent relevant quality or authoritative content. They don't know how to find it. They don't know if it even exists. Right? So that's some of the barriers that people face when they're looking to learn from information and data. And you'll notice we're taking not necessarily a strategic view, but we're looking at individuals and their productivity because ultimately that's what we're trying to do is improve that and at an aggregate level, ultimately improve the organization's productivity going forward. And I think I just saw a hand go up.
I believe I did too, but I think they put it down as well. If you do want to jump in, let us know. We can take you off mute. You can continue.
Okay. Challenge area number two, people can't create or update information and data from what they learn. So sometimes people are not sure what's worth saving, what's worth keeping. They don't know where to put it. They don't know how to describe it, right? So that goes directly to the metadata word that somebody put in a little bit earlier. It takes too long and too difficult. Don't know if it's important or even a part of their job. So what this encapsulates is a challenge that if people have to do something separate with information that's outside of the workflow related to the job at hand, very reluctant to do that. It creates some friction, it creates some challenges. Sometimes people have difficulty learning from friends and colleagues. They don't know who knows something. Trying to find somebody that's knowledgeable or somebody that's got a certain expertise in an organization is sometimes a bit of a challenge. Asking questions the right way or asking the right questions sometimes is a challenge. And of course, the person who could be most helpful very often isn't interested in helping or perhaps isn't incented to do so. For example, I've actually worked with some organizations where they'll bring in external project managers who have a ton of knowledge and expertise, and they're never able to, or never encouraged, or never incented, or never expected to share what they know with the internal project managers. So there's a huge learning opportunity there that's missed. We can't share what we've learned with others. Don't know what has value. Don't know who needs to know. Don't know who's interested, don't know how to share what we've learned, right? How do you frame up some information so somebody can actually best learn from it to apply in their particular circumstance? Right? So that's both a current and a future problem when you think about it. There's, okay, what's got value and interest today, and what might have value and interest 5, 6 years down the road or longer. Um, right? We can't learn from what we've done. So when you think about it, learning is both a reflective, like a past view, but also a future view. So sometimes we actually don't know how to have those conversations. And we don't know how to do that consistently, or we don't do that as individuals or groups or organizations for any number of reasons. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's financial pressure, sometimes it's other kinds of pressures. Learning from doing, sometimes it's too difficult to find the relevant experts, relevant information, and don't know how to best engage and learn from these resources either. So there's a whole bunch of challenges in a whole bunch of different areas, and we'll come back to that diagram in a little bit, but solving those problems, reducing those pain points, right, can have a positive impact on productivity, job satisfaction, retention, work environment, expedites onboarding. At an aggregate level, as you aggregate these things, better organizational performance. Reducing pain points has a positive impact on managing risk, right? Whether it's reputational, whether it's organizational, whether it's financial risk. And of course, in organizations that have a degree of legislative compliance, it facilitates achieving that compliance as well. So here's something that Jazz found for us, and it's a study that quantifies the benefits of, in this particular case, Viva Topics, but some of these benefits can be attributed to, in many cases, just better information and knowledge management. And this is just one example for some of you who maybe have been around for a while. Every couple of years or 3 years, IDC, Gartner, Meta, Forrester, other organizations will kick up research that similarly identifies cost savings or advantages for reducing the time it takes to do certain things around knowledge and information management. And you can translate that in a business case to a positive impact on an organization. Of course, adjusting to some of these things are actually funded by some of the product and service providers. You got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. So we talked about all of the different pain points. Let's have a look at some of the strategies. So in the next few slides, I'm going to review some strategies to address the pain points. And at the same time, you'll see a bit of a framework kind of build over time that you can apply if you're thinking about knowledge management at a strategic level within your organization, or if you're looking to do something tactically. They give you some categories to do some deep dives and look to solve, some very practical problems within your organization. So one of the first things that most strategies or most plans look to address is connecting people. Right, as we talked about, that's one of the challenges. If you want to learn from somebody, you got to know who has something you can learn from, how to get in touch with them, and you got to find a way to actually do that with the least amount of friction, given everybody's got a job to do. So some of what we can do in 365 is use profiles. We can link those profiles to LinkedIn. There's something called Microsoft Delve, and keep an eye on that because the life cycle or the lifespan for that may be coming to an end, being replaced by some other things. But there's ways that you can, using those tools within 365, find out who knows what. Viva Topics allows you to do that as well. You can use Teams and Viva Connect, Viva Engage, Yammer, SharePoint, to create places where people can come and learn from each other and understand and be part of conversations where you actually can exchange what you know, build some commonalities and practice together, develop some tools, techniques, and approaches. So that's connecting people. Second thing is boosting knowledge and skill. And what we're talking about here is if you're if part of the one of the challenges that you're trying to overcome in your organization is helping people learn from each other and collaborate. Great, best thing to do is boost some knowledge and skill. The good thing is 365 has Viva Learning, which is a great way to curate and make available learning resources related to some core competencies around communication, collaboration, interviewing skills, and so on. And it allows you to actually even target some of those skills and content to specific communities. So it becomes a really interesting way of making learning available across the organization for whether it's core competencies or technical skills. The other thing too is HR can be a really valuable partner to validate some of the learning, some of the content, and right play an active role in curating some of that for your organization. And of course, if your organization also has a library, librarians are phenomenal at providing access to external resources that can be part of the overall learning available within your organization. Next, manage content intentionally. So what we're talking about here touches on many of the things that you've actually added through that word cloud. And we're talking about putting content where it can be accessed and managed rather than isolated and siloed repositories. Looking at security and access models that are more open than closed so people can access information to learn from. In 365, using flat hierarchies and really solid metadata and defaulting and auto-generating some of that metadata to remove that friction. Improving Microsoft Search and SharePoint search experiences with things like customized verticals and bookmarks and Q&As. And of course, extending search using graph connectors to other repositories as well. One of the big things that a lot of organizations are still facing even today is large repositories of redundant, obsolete, and transitory content. So Microsoft Purview is a great tool for doing that because it allows you to tag in and manage this content through a lifecycle. And you probably noticed this already, but I've got some icons in this diagram that basically touches on the different technology tools in 365. And when I was going through this morning in my head, just kind of looking at some of what we had, I've actually added Power Apps and Power Automate as well. So something that we've started to do at Gravity Union is customize solutions for organizations so that it reduces the effort from a document workflow perspective. Right, so there's some really, really interesting capability in 365 to help along those lines. The other thing that a lot of organizations and individuals within them are facing is rapid technological change to the point where, oh my God, they don't know what's coming at them. Some of it you can't avoid. So, with 365, Microsoft's always making incremental changes and releasing those changes through the different platforms. But there's some big things that are coming at organizations, big opportunities. So something that's got some value is to publish some sort of a roadmap in advance to let people know what the big changes are. And even like Microsoft does in some cases as well, give people the opportunity to articulate some requirements or to express some sort of a vote or alignment with what may be more appropriate and more urgent right now to meet some of their requirements than something that could be done a little later. So a lot of organizations are starting to publish an internal technology roadmap and then, providing opportunities and vehicles for people to actually engage with that. It's also a change management kind of strategy because people tend to support what they help create. So if they're involved in something, the odds are pretty good they're going to be well aware of it in advance of it actually happening, and they'll be more inclined to support it when it actually gets released. And of course, there's a lot of the technologies that we've been talking about in 365 can actually help do that. So, because this is about knowledge and learning, it's also very important to monitor and evolve what you do from a KM perspective over time. So 365 has a wealth of data that you can use, Power BI, for example, to look at, extract, and make some sense of when it comes to activity in the platform, where content is being stored, if retention rules are applied in this content, if it's being managed through a life cycle, if people are accidentally creating multiple versions, or they're recreating content because they can't find it even though it's there, right? So using Power BI, and Gravity Union has a tool called Moat, which will help you do that as well. The advantage of Moat is it keeps data for longer than the standard refresh rate in 365. So monitoring, learning from that, and adjusting going forward is all part of the learning process, and some good tools to do that. And finally, we've talked a lot about technology, and that's the focus here, but keep people in mind. So to make all of this happen, you still have to think about key roles like metadata specialists, information architectures, curators, right? Viva Topics is absolutely wonderful, but somebody somewhere is going to spend a little bit of time thinking about what topics are of most interest to the organization so that they can actually percolate to the top and be available for everybody with the least amount of friction. Um, think also about the power of knowledge leadership. And what we really mean by there is having leaders demonstrate and prompt learning and knowledge sharing by example. And we're talking about supporting knowledge questions in work surveys, being intentional about sharing what they know with more than just our immediate team, right? That happens a lot in organizations. Working with HR to include core competencies that support knowledge sharing and learning. Adding knowledge sharing to procurement contracts, right, to get past that project management example that I articulated a little while ago, right, and the list goes on. So, right, so keep people in mind. Key roles that fill the spaces and right enable people to actually better leverage technology together. Facilitators to help those conversations take place, whether they're live or online, and leadership that illustrates to people what the best thing to do is. So this is kind of the framework. And again, it's all about what makes the most sense within your organization. But generally speaking, when you look at different initiatives, different strategies, at some point or other, they're always doing something about connecting people, giving people the knowledge and skill that they can work better together, share knowledge, and learn from each other. Really being thoughtful about how content is managed within the organization, which is storing, describing, findability, etc. Keep everybody in the loop, monitor and evolve what it is that you do on a regular basis. And of course, keep people in mind, both in terms of key roles, key skills, key capabilities, and leadership as well. I think, Jazz, we have some demos.
Yes, thank you. That was great. So I'm going to go through some examples of those strategies to start to bring them to life a little bit. And the first one that I'll touch on is the connecting people strategy. So we know that when people are looking for answers or knowledge in an organization, it's not always found in a document or a page, all nicely laid out for somebody. It's with people, and so it's critical to find who knows what. Within Microsoft 365, search has always been evolving. It's been this sort of, slowly improving system. It's not always perfect, but one strength, one area of Microsoft Search that I want to show you and talk about is profiles. If you haven't looked up looking for people or searching for people using Microsoft Search, one thing to be aware of now is that the profile cards are pretty dynamic. They are based on how close you are to a person, what content you can see. And that helps you understand, what this person knows, find out who knows what. As well, there's pieces being brought in externally, obviously with Microsoft owning LinkedIn. That is another place where knowledge is starting to come into an organization as well. And so what this looks like, I'll just show this quick overview here. If you do a standard search within SharePoint, on your SharePoint intranet, you're looking for a person, you may, start with, if you know the person you're looking for, you may start with their name. And you see that, things that you would expect, an overview, contact information, where they are in the organization. And the part that is dynamic, a little bit starting to show up more and more, is the files or the work product that people have worked on. And so you see this based on your permissions. As well, another area, if you're investing in Microsoft 365 groups, is you start to see a list of those groups as well. And so that can give you an indication of what they know, what they work on, just based on the types of content as well as the types of groups that they contribute to. So that's a modern search if you haven't seen that before, looking for people. This one is just a deeper look at the profile, a slightly different view of it, as well as it shows the LinkedIn connections. So if you haven't seen this yet, LinkedIn is being brought into profiles. You can see if you have permissions, you can see more knowledge about them. So things that they probably didn't share internally on their profile, where they were educated, maybe past roles, skills endorsements, things like that. So merging those external and internal sources can help people get an understanding about who knows what in their organization. The next thing I'll touch on is community. So that was another strategy, especially around connecting people as well, connecting a network of people. Just briefly, the difference between community spaces and then more structured work groups is that communities tend to be more horizontally connected. So it's people within different departments or business units coming together over a common interest, maybe project management or something like that. And work groups are typically more task-based, or they're based on the org structure. And the way I like to think about it is just a key difference is output is what is the output of a community versus a work group. Work groups are typically producing, maybe a plan or some kind of work product, where communities is more about discovery, understanding what's happening, sharing the latest and greatest, sharing knowledge, as well as building relationships. And so both of these are well supported in the Microsoft 365 platform, but we will talk about communities since that's what we're talking about, knowledge management and sharing knowledge. This is an example from Gravity Union. We have a community that's based around learning, right? We're obviously working in technology. We need to keep up to speed, and things are always changing. So I'm having a place, and this is within Teams, and that's sort of the anchor, the place where we share knowledge. And so pretty, no surprise here, right? We're sharing information in the chats. As well, we've connected SharePoint and Yammer conversations and a calendar, because we do get together as people that are interested in the latest and greatest in technology that we use, both Microsoft and Collab Space. We want to get together and share that information. So putting it all together and knowing when the events are coming up, that's also a key part of this. And this is an opt-in group as well. So typically these knowledge management, knowledge sharing communities are opt-in. And updates are posted in the main feed. They may link to other websites or other places. But one place that we often have share links is within the SharePoint site that backs this community. And so this is taking a bit of time to structure and design your landing place in SharePoint can really help that knowledge community. We have a little description, the people that are in charge, so you always know who to go to. As well, we have a place because it's important for us to go back and share videos and recordings. That's the most prominent thing. And so using tools like Stream within the Microsoft platform can help you organize and tag these recordings. That's one way to bring together a community and bring everything together within Teams, which is where people are spending a lot of their time and their workday as well. Okay, the next strategy I'll talk about, we talked about boosting knowledge and skill, and this is about that upskilling point that Dale was talking about. So I'm giving people the information they need in order to maybe change roles or to add to what they're doing or to learn something new. A key part of this in the Microsoft platform is using Viva Learning. So if you haven't seen it before, it's sort of this app and it lives within Teams, but it also shows up in other places. So it can show up on your intranet. It can be within Teams conversations as well. So it's kind of embedding itself throughout various Microsoft 365 apps, but there is a home base for it within Teams. And what it does is it connects to third-party learning catalogs that your organization already might have. Success Factors is a common one, but there's other places, LinkedIn Learning, maybe Microsoft Learn, other places where you want to send people to upskill or get a boost in their knowledge. A key part as well for Viva Learning that we find is really useful with our clients is connecting to SharePoint content, because we know organizations have spent time building out their own learning repositories, and employees find, information and learning that comes from their organization the most valuable. And if it's stored in SharePoint, Viva Learning can also connect to that as a learning source or as learning content. And another thing to keep in mind, you may have heard about this Viva Suite, and there's a license for it. This part, Viva Learning, there is some of it that is available with standard M365 licenses. So almost all of our clients have access to some standard embedded license, you get access to LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learn, some Microsoft 365 training, as well as content that you may have put in SharePoint. So I want to talk about that and show you a little bit how that works as well. If you have other learning repositories, SuccessFactors, Saba, some other ones, it does require a separate license to connect to those. And another question that sometimes I get is Viva Learning replace an LMS, or is it a LMS, which is it stands for Learning Management System? It doesn't always replace a LMS because your learning management system may be needed still for detailed tracking, compliance, or sending out quizzes or other capabilities. And so Viva Learning has some of it, but maybe not to the degree that you need that an LMS has. So depending on your situation, it may provide some of that functionality or it may not, depending on what your needs are. I want to show you just quickly how this works. So I'll just show this short overview, and if I have time, maybe I can show it as well. I can switch my screen. But this is Viva Learning in Teams. So you can see we're inside Teams. You can set up Viva Learning to present courses to you or content to you based on your interests. So in this case, we have Megan here who has set business strategy, collaboration, and marketing as interests. And so that's showing courses and content based on that. She can also, that's sort of the primary way you can browse learning catalogs is looking by interest, but you can also browse by providers. So in this case, you can see 2 or 3 providers here. Saba, Go1 are external content sources for learning, as well as content that's coming from SharePoint. So that's what's under that Contoso section there is it's videos, PDFs, words, other types of sometimes what's called micro learning. So things that maybe particular roles might need. Maybe you want to put your sales onboarding kit into this section and it would show up as learning tools, learning reference for those particular roles. So this is a way to bring together some of the standard learning catalogs your organization's already invested in with specific content for particular roles. And just a little bit more on about bringing content into SharePoint. This is from an example from Gravity Union here. So we have set up Viva Learning. So it's bringing together specific learning for our consultants. We still have clients as well on SharePoint 2019. So we need to put that together with all of the modern things. So we put together PowerPoints and Words that show up, Word documents that show up within Viva Learning here. And this is really helpful because we can show everything together. So that's one of the key benefits or value points of Viva Learning is making discoverability, no matter where it is, easier. One of the key things to keep in mind, though, it does take some curation, right? You want to have somebody that is responsible for adding things into this list so it shows up into Viva Learning and it's available for the right teams. And I put this checklist together. It's more of a takeaway for you after the session if this is something you're interested in. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but there are a few steps to set up Viva Learning. So I just wanted to mention that there's a list behind the scenes, a SharePoint list or Microsoft list that you're going to want to add to and maintain or have somebody add to and maintain so that content shows up in the right place. And be patient as well. So the syncing can take a day or two, but it does work. And there is a report as well that you can look at to see if things are connecting or if they're not. Okay, so that's a little bit about boosting and upskilling and learning within your organization, which is a key part of knowledge management. Another key pillar that Dale was talking about was managing content thoughtfully. So taking a look at the redundant, outdated, and the transitory content, as well as taking a thoughtful approach to designing your information architecture. So there's a lot we could say about metadata and information architecture. We have a number of blog posts and I think even past webinars that talk about this. But we want to, if there's sort of a takeaway from this section is don't bring your folder structure into SharePoint Online if you're thinking of moving a lot of the knowledge that's embedded in your network drives, and there's probably some good stuff in there. We highly, highly recommend don't just take that structure, that embedded folders, and move it into SharePoint Online. You want to take a bit of time to plan metadata using content types and the term store, because that will set you up for success for searching, for using compliance features, for other parts of Microsoft 365 that are just going to make knowledge management easier. So definitely take a look at some of our blog posts. There's lots of advice out there on setting up content types and term stores as well. And having this great user experience, so managing your content intentionally and thoughtfully, will help people get more focus on getting that value from that information and that knowledge. So want to make sure that that's a key priority as well. But the main thing I want to focus on here in this section is this other application. You may have heard of it, you may have seen it, but I'll give you a quick overview of Viva Topics. It's often described as your sort of internal Wikipedia. So it's that place where you go and you need to look up something you don't know what a project is, or an acronym, or maybe a product catalog has, there's pages that list all the products and what they are and who's responsible and things like that. So it is a reference tool that's kept up to date and created by AI. So it's artificial intelligence working together with a knowledge manager or knowledge curator to create these pages. And it works really well when you have lots and lots of items and documents and files. So if you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of documents, you can generate thousands of topics from that data. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all organized. I know I spent some time just talking about metadata and content types, but this will also work if you have not taken that time necessarily yet and applied all that metadata. It will work better with the metadata, but this is an option if you have lots and lots of content and you want to create that knowledge base, that knowledge repository. Mm. I see a question or a comment about Chat GPT. This is not quite that, but maybe it will be embedded sometime in the future. I'm sure Microsoft is thinking of ways to embed it in all parts of it. So this is definitely a step in that direction. It doesn't generate, it generates some metadata, but probably not all the metadata that you want. So I saw that question in there. It's starting to introduce a concept of some key tags on pages, and I'm sure we will see more as time goes on. It can save time on finding out who knows what. So a key feature of these topic pages is it brings together people. So it tries to find the subject matter experts related to topics and present that on the page, as well as it brings together key files and SharePoint sites. So it gives you the resources to go to learn more about this topic. So it's that one page, bring it all together into one place. Sharing and reusability across the stack is really important as well. So being able to link people to topics in SharePoint pages, in different apps they might use in Word, you're going to see it more and more popping up in documents, as well as email and chats. So if you're typing something, it starts to recognize, oh, this might be a topic and suggests that you link to that topic page. This, I know I just spent much time talking about this. I think it's a very promising area, especially when you have lots and lots of content and getting value from that content. It does require a separate license. So most technology that's using AI behind the scenes is going to require a separate license. So just keep that in mind as well. This is an example of a SharePoint page, and what you're seeing here is a red highlight because that this is a topic. This is a topic link, and this is created automatically. Although I think there will be some updates, so this isn't always created automatically. Author or page author can remove it, but currently, right now, it's created automatically. There's a link here that's highlighted to show you that it's a topic. And when someone clicks on that or hovers, they get a preview of that topic. They see a little description. They see the subject matter experts as well as the resources associated with that topic. And there's more details that people can get. So this is just a snippet, a small preview, and this is sort of the heart of Viva Topics. This is what that page looks like, and this is where, again, going back to our theme of finding who knows what, this is a key way that people can find out who knows what about certain topics. And the page can be edited as well. So a knowledge manager or knowledge curator can edit this. They can add people, pin files and pages. The page does, or AI suggests some pages and files that can be pinned, and then a knowledge manager can go in and decide what can get pinned. As well as last section you're seeing here is just showing connections to different topics. So if you have, a number of products all under the same umbrella, you may want to connect all those products together to create more of a map for people. And you can create sort of first and second points of contact there. And it's really common to search for a topic and to use search. And before, we have invested in bookmarks and Q&As in the search experience. Viva Topics starts to elevate that. So if there is a term that someone's searching for and it's recognized as a topic, it will show up like this. So it gets a special little call out. It shows the people again, so finding who knows what. And it indicates to users that this is a Viva Topics result as well, and asks for some feedback. So that's another key part of Viva Topics and keeping it fresh and up to date is it does get feedback from end users or those knowledge consumers to keep tuning the engine behind the scenes. And as I mentioned, topics do show up in other places in Microsoft 365 too. So you can start typing in Outlook and it suggests topics. You can also start typing in Teams and it suggests topics as well. So very sort of similar, consistent user experience throughout the different apps. And the main area, so this is more for the knowledge curator side of things. So the knowledge manager, the person that is looking at topics across the organization, they can go in and they can manage the topics. They can list themselves as subject matter experts or they can list others. If I do come in, if I am listed as a subject matter expert, I will also see it saying, hey, we listed you as this topic. Does this seem right? So constantly trying to get feedback to improve behind the scenes as well. There's a lot more to Viva Topics. I could probably spend another webinar talking about it. This is just a quick overview, and reach out definitely or let me know if you want to learn more about it. This is something that we do see potential for some common scenarios where it's been useful is if you have a deep, rich sort of product or service or project portfolio, it can manage that, create those pages, create that layer so people can then start understanding what that portfolio is about. For onboarding, we see it having benefits for sure, just reducing the time it takes to find all the relevant things that a new person might need to know, whether they've moved internally or come from externally as well. This can be informal, sort of that in context training as well. We often think of training or learning as these courses that you take time off and you book it off and you go and do it. But this is also a type of learning that can be more on the job, right? So just a few minutes need to look up something. Identifying experts, we talked, about that. A customer resource, a customer issues database as well, or knowledge source. So looking up the common issues, finding quick answers. Also for sales, being able to build that toolkit, build that rich source of information for teams like that. And so this, we do see that Viva Topics is about making that sort of tacit knowledge, that information that might be buried either in people's heads or in documents far, in different folders and things like that, making that more explicit and helping organizations just be more innovative, more competitive, and get that information out there that so they can use it. And I'm sure you can think of other scenarios as well where Viva Topics might be useful. One thing I do want to mention that even though I mentioned AI behind the scenes and it's working, it doesn't happen alone. It's really important for the success of Viva Topics to have knowledge curators or a manager assigned. And there is a workflow that comes with Viva Topics. So there's this concept of suggested topics then being confirmed or removed, right? Because the AI will find things that maybe shouldn't be topics. And so having someone curate that list regularly is going to be important for making sure that this sort of Wikipedia source is relevant to your organization. And then other things that they would do is follow up with experts, recognize people. That's a key ingredient for making knowledge management successful is recognizing people that are contributing to that knowledge base. And then there is the edit functionality where that knowledge manager can go in and edit the page as well. And so they can remove documents, remove sites, add people, etc. And the last thing I'll leave you with, it can feel daunting to build a knowledge base, but it's important to think about this as value over time. So delivering initial value, using the AI, using the engine will get you initial value because people will be able to access that knowledge base and see some of the key topics. But over time, as you get more people using the system, you start to have the end user feedback or knowledge consumer feedback, right? You're crowdsourcing feedback from search or from them viewing the page and being recognized as experts. And that'll just only make it sort of better and more valuable over time. So important to think about that concept as well and pairing this engine with the knowledge contributors that you have in your organization. That was a quick sort of tour of some of the Microsoft 365 ways of bringing knowledge management to life. We talked a little bit about search profiles, communities, Viva Learning, Viva Topics, and I really hope that gave you some ideas of different tools, different places to start building out knowledge management in your organization. Now I will pass it back to Dale for a wrap up and leave any questions. So as we're going through the next couple slides here, if you have any questions, leave them in the chat and we will address those as well.
All right. So I like the way you call that. You call it a tour versus a demo. So it's a really good tour. So as you can tell, there's a plethora of technology available in 365 that will allow you to configure some really good solutions and use it as a knowledge platform. Right? But keep in mind that it's got to be thoughtfully implemented. It needs to be user and learner centric because those are the individuals whose productivity you're looking to actually improve. There's some really important roles within the organization, there are knowledge curators, et cetera, but also HR, also if there's a library within your organization, right? IT, obviously, because it's technology related. So when you bring all those together, you'll actually end up with the business results that you're looking for. But think about taking a knowledge and learning based approach. So uncover this pain points that are specific to your organization. And I'm using that language intentionally because something may work in one organization, but your organization's context are different, priorities are different, language is different, decision makers and senior leadership are different. They'll have different priorities and preoccupations. So find out what's really important, where the real pain points are, order those actions, take some action, reflect on the experience, make some changes based on what you've learned, and take the next action, rinse and repeat. So it's like an experiential learning cycle, but it's a little bit like agile as well, right? When you think about the actual process of reflecting, learning, and building as you go along. Um, and I think that's it for me. Why don't we go into some questions if anybody has any?
And thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining. And
Absolutely,
thank you to
thank you.
everybody for taking the time as well.
Yeah.
We are available if anything occurs to you as well after this session. And just to reiterate, we will be sharing the recording and the slides as well.
Yeah.